Ladies and gentlemen, at 6 o'clock, I'd like to call the October 21st meeting of the Planning and Zoning Commission of Columbia County to order. If you'd stand with us, Commissioner Wilder will lead us in our invocation, and Commissioner Futch will lead us in the pledge.
Y'all bow with us. Dear Lord, we want to thank you for yet another beautiful day, this fall weather. We want to thank you for all the blessings you bestow upon this country, on our community. We ask that you would look over us all, that you look over our proceedings tonight and guide us and help us in our decisions. Thank you for all the people that have shown up tonight to participate, and to please give us all safe passage home from this meeting. Name, amen.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Be seated. If I could remind you to silence your cell phones before the meeting starts. We do have all 5 commissioners present tonight. Gentlemen, you've had a chance to review the minutes from the previous meeting. If there are no changes or additions, I need a motion for approval.
So moved.
Do we hear a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor? Motion to approve the minutes as submitted passes 5-0. Gentlemen, you've also had a chance to review tonight's agenda. If there are no additions to that agenda as presented, I need a motion for approval.
So moved.
Do we hear a second?
Second.
All in favor? Motion to approve the agenda as submitted passes 5-0. Before we begin, I'd like to take a moment to clarify that the Planning Commission is a recommending body to the Columbia County Board of Commissioners. Decisions made on rezoning and variance requests tonight will be forwarded to the Commissioners for final action on November 2nd, 2021 in these chambers. If you wish to address the Board of Commissioners at their meeting, please see Ms. Kara Harden, and she'll provide you with a request to speak form. We're less formal in this meeting, and if you'd like to comment on something in one of our public hearings, or if you'd like to add some additional comments on something not on our agenda tonight in our public comment section at the end of the meeting, please raise your hand. We'll ask you to come up, give us your name and home address, and then take 3 to 5 minutes to give us your opinion either for or against, or whatever additional information at the end of the meeting you'd like us to have. That being said, we'll jump right into tonight's unfinished business. Ms. Montgomery, we've got a two-parter here, file RZ 211004, parts 1 and 2.
Yes, sir. This request was postponed from the October 7th meeting due to some needs to work out some stormwater issues on the site. I'm going to go through this pretty quickly. The applicants have requested to withdraw this request. This is the location of the property that's involved and the current zoning. It is currently R1 single-family residential. And the current request is to rezone just this portion of the property. In addressing the stormwater concerns, they have expanded the property they're planning to include in the PUD, so they will be submitting a revised application for the additional acreage. That requires re-advertising of the request with the corrected acreage, so the plan is to withdraw this current request and resubmit a new application for the correct acreage.
I'm assuming they want to withdraw without prejudice.
Yes, sir. Okay. This is the existing site and the existing planned unit development of Wright's Farm that's under construction that the property would be added to. And the previous approved plan and the plan with the addition of the 4.5 acres that was proposed with this application. And the revised section detail and the future development map, which does show this in the neighborhood's character area. Again, they are planning to add additional acreage beyond what we've seen with this particular application, so they are requesting to withdraw this request without prejudice.
Thank you, ma'am. Gentlemen, any questions of staff? Okay, this was from our public hearing before that we had closed. I'll reopen this public hearing. If anybody would like to comment either for or against this particular rezoning, you have an opportunity to come forward now. Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing and accept a motion to approve, deny, or to allow the applicant to withdraw without prejudice.
Can I ask a question, clarification? Can we do both part 1 and part 2 with one motion? Or
Yes, sir.
All right. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to withdraw without prejudice for file RZ 211004 rezoning and major PUDs revision at 4848 Wrightsboro Road for part 1 and part 2.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Motion to withdraw without prejudice passes 5-0. And Ms. Montgomery, we've got a variance that was postponed from our October 7th meeting, file VA 211001.
Yes, sir. This application was postponed due to a late submittal of the site plan and the information that water utility needed to complete their review. In the intervening time period, they've been able to get out and survey the property and determine the sewer line location on the ground and verify that the proposed construction is not in the county utility easement. This is the location of the property on the east side of Spyglass Road, currently zoned R2, single-family residential, and is part of Westlake. This is the aerial of the site, and you can see this is the existing concrete at the back of the property that they're planning to cover with the proposed deck. This was part of the confusion with the sewer line. Our maps and the plat did show them in different locations, said water utility has been out and surveyed it and verified that as proposed, the construction is about 3 inches outside of the county easement. This is the existing site, the existing house on the property, and the proposed elevations for the addition. Now they are requesting a 0-foot setback on the rear property line with this addition. This does extend off the back of the house towards the golf course. The site plan we have does actually show the structure crossing the property line. We have spoken with the contractor. He's very aware that this will have to be revised before building permits. We cannot give him permission to cross the property line. We can only give him permission to stay on the property and go to that 0-foot setback. I've also verified with the POA for Westlake that they're okay with this 0-foot setback. They did say that is conditioned on the golf course property owner being okay with it, and that is in process. That request has been forwarded up to the corporate ownership for the golf course to comment on that. There has been some discussion about whether or not they may acquire property from the golf course. For the purposes of this review, we're assuming they're not, so we're dealing with the property lines as they currently exist. So staff recommends approval with the condition that the rear setback is reduced to 0 feet for the deck only. All other structures are to meet the R2 setbacks, and that no portion of the deck nor any of the land disturbance related to the construction may cross onto the adjacent property. So just to be very clear that all of the work has to take place on the relevant property and not on any of the adjacent land. And that concludes the staff recommendation.
Thank you, ma'am. Gentlemen, any questions?
Yeah, so basically, he's gonna have to redraw it.
Yes, sir.
Plan as drawn is just not gonna go. It's gonna have to
Correct.
shrink it down a little bit.
Right, so before he submits for the building permit, he'll have to do a better plan that does show everything being on the property.
Any other questions? We'll reopen the public hearing for this as well. Is the applicant here? Okay, is there anyone else who would like to speak either for or against this particular variance? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing and accept a motion to approve with conditions to deny or to table.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to approve with conditions file VA 21-1001, variance to section 9053, to reduce the rear setback at 605 Spyglass Road.
Do we hear a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Motion to approve carries 5-0. Mr. Butler, we've got file MW 21-10-01, minor waiver, presented as information only.
That is correct. This is a minor waiver that we approved back on October 6th for a reduction in the building setback at 3212 Pickens Way. This is the location of the property over in the Wrights Farm development. Also zoning, getting zone planning and development. Also the site plan, it was only for the east side of the property. Cannot be reduced on this side due to an easement. So again, it's very clear it's only for there. Again, the staff approved this back on October 6th.
Thank you, sir. Gentlemen, any questions on this? Okay, thank you very much. Ms. Montgomery, we have 2 temporary use authorizations. The first is for tax map parcel 39. For tax map 39, parcel 191, I'm sorry.
Yes, sir. This is a temporary use authorization request for 231 Langston Drive. This property is located at the end of Langston Drive, is currently zoned RA Residential Agricultural. There is an existing single wide on the property, which you can see on the aerial. And the plan is to remove that single wide. It will temporarily be located at the front of the property. The single wide is to be replaced with a new double wide. And while that is going on, the applicant is intending to live in a travel trailer on the site, which will be set back near the mobile home site. So the temporary use authorization is to allow first the 2 mobile homes to be temporarily on the site until the single wide is picked up by its new owner. and also to allow the applicant to live in the travel trailer while the new double wide is set up and ready to, and for occupation. And staff is recommending approval of the request.
Do we know what the timeline is on the pickup?
I believe he said everything is to be complete by November 30th, so he was thinking it was just gonna be a couple weeks, so that should be well within the TUA timeline.
Okay. Gentlemen, any questions? Okay, this is not a public hearing, so I'll need a motion to approve, deny, or to table the first TUA.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to approve the temporary use authorization at 231 Langston Drive.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Discussion? All in favor? Motion to approve carries 5-0. Ms. Montgomery, we've got another TUA for tax map 27, parcel 46.
Yes, sir, this is a temporary use authorization request at 2573 Scotts Ferry Road. This property is located near the intersection of Scotts Ferry and White Oak and is currently zoned R1 single-family residential. The applicant has sold his existing house and is preparing to build a new house on this property and is requesting the temporary use authorization in order to live in the travel trailer on the property until the new home is built. There are no building permits submitted yet, but the temporary use authorization will be good for 1 year only. If construction extends beyond that, he would have to come back for a renewal request. This is the approximate site for the travel trailer, which is near the middle of the site and should meet all setback requirements. And staff is recommending approval.
Any questions, staff? Not a public hearing, so I'll need a motion to approve, deny, or to table.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to approve the temporary use authorization at 2573 Scotts Ferry Road.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Motion to approve carries 5-0. Ms. Montgomery will stay with you for a conceptual plan for Highland Lakes, Section 2 and 3.
Yes, sir. These are the next two phases of Highland Lakes located off William Few Parkway. Currently zoned R2 single-family residential. This is the location of these next two phases. Over here to the left, you can see sections 1A and 1B, which have been constructed. This next two phases includes 158 lots total. It includes the connection through to Honey Lane, which was a zoning requirement. It also includes a handful of alley-loaded lots at the bottom and a new amenity area addition with some parking and a community lake access. The zoning conditions on this property include requirements for replanting of the buffers as well as installation of turn lanes on William Few. The turn lanes have been installed already, and the buffer is shown on these plans and will need to be replanted as necessary. The lots will all have to meet R2 standards, so minimum 10,000 square feet, and staff is recommending approval of the concept plan.
Gentlemen, any questions, staff? Not a public hearing, so I'll need a motion to approve as submitted, deny, or to table.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to approve the conceptual plan for Highland Lakes, Section 2 and 3, located off William View Parkway.
Do we hear a second?
Second.
Discussion? All in favor? Motion to approve carries 5-0. Ms. Montgomery will stay with you for a preliminary plat for Greenpoint Phase 2.
Yes, sir. This is the next section of the Greenpoint PRD, the planned residential development off Appling Harlem Road. This is the approximate location of the site in the dashed outline there near the center. And this was the concept plan. We'll see in a moment there's been a minor change in the road layout for this area. You can see basically this road curves now. That is due to the cemetery located here that was discovered during the process for developing this site. So the preliminary plat, as shown, includes 89 single-family lots with a minimum lot size of 6,530 square feet. Front setbacks are 25 feet and 20 feet, depending on the lot size. All of the lots have minimum side setbacks of 7.5 feet and rear setbacks of 10 feet. A minimum driveway length of 25 feet does apply to all the lots. Sidewalks and street trees are required on both sides of the roads, and 2.31 acres of open space is provided in this section. The development is limited to platting no more than 300 lots prior to provision of a second entrance. This section, once final platted, would bring them to 227, so they have not triggered that requirement yet. And staff is recommending approval.
Gentlemen, any questions, staff? This is not a public hearing, so I'll need a motion to approve, deny, or to table.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to approve the preliminary plat for Greenpoint Phase 2 located off Appling Harlem Road.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Okay, any discussion? All in favor? To approve carries 5-0. Mr. Butler, massage operator's license for Awaken Renewed LLC.
That's correct. It's an MOL for Awaken Renewed LLC, located at 427 Blue Ridge Drive. It's for mobile massage services only. The applicant meets all the requirements of the MOL. Staff recommends approval.
Gentlemen, any questions? Okay, this is not a public hearing, so I'll need a motion to approve, deny, or to table.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to approve the massage operator's license for Awaken Renewed LLC to provide mobile massage services.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Approved carries 5-0. We'll move into our public hearing portion of the meeting tonight. Ms. Neal, first is file RZ 21-10-08, conditional use.
Yes, so this is a request for a conditional use for a tattoo at 713 Gateway Center Boulevard on 1.8 acres, currently zoned C2 General Commercial. This shows the location of the site off Gateway Center Boulevard. The zoning is surrounded by C2 zoning, has some RA and the planned unit development to the north. And the aerial of the site. And this shows the existing site. The applicant's planning to utilize one 1,200 square foot suite within the existing shopping center for a tattoo shop. The business will be open 5 days a week from 12 to 8 p.m. on Wednesday through Thursday, 12 to 10 p.m. on Friday and Saturday, and 12 to 6 on Sunday. They'll be closed on Monday and Tuesdays. There'll be 6 tattoo artists in the shop, and they plan to cater to the military and local communities with an upscale and well-operated tattoo studio. The property owner has requested that this conditional use only apply to that suite, which is addressed 721 Gateway Center Boulevard. It shows the plat of the property. And the parcel is located within the Gateway Mixed Use Activity Center on the future development map, which is intended for moderate density detached single-family residential and civic uses, and is characterized by compact, walkable, higher density development served by paths and streets suitable for pedestrians as well as cars. The existing zoning and commercial center is appropriate within the activity center, and the conditional use is in keeping with this intent. Staff recommends approval with the condition that it only applies to 721 Gateway Center Boulevard.
Thank you, ma'am. Gentlemen, any questions for Ms. Neal? All right, this is a public hearing. Is the applicant here? Yes, sir. Would you like to come forward and give us any additional information? All right. Thank you, sir. This is a public hearing. Is there anyone here that would like to speak either for or against this particular rezoning? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing and accept a motion to approve with conditions, to deny, or to table.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to approve with condition file RZ 21-10-08, conditional use for tattoo at 721 Gateway Center Boulevard.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Motion to approve carries 5-0. Ms. Mystery, file RZ 21-1009, rezoned from RA to CC.
Yes, so this is a rezoning request at 6322 Wrightsboro Road on 3.1 acres. The current zoning is RA, residential agricultural, and the request is for CC, community commercial. Here is the location. It's quite near the intersection of Appling Harlem Road and Wrightsboro Road. Here's a zoning map. This property is RA, and to the north and south is the PUD, which is a Greenpoint PUD that was approved in 2020. And then to the south of that in the blue is the Greenpoint PRD, which is a residential component. There is some C2 parcels across Appling Harlem, and that's the gas station and undeveloped parcel. And you've got R1 to the southeast, Hatcher Glen. And this is just to show the context of the property. It's basically surrounded by the Greenpoint PUD and PRD that has a mix of uses. The PUD is on 800 acres and the PRD is on 200 acres. This is the close-up of the aerial that shows where the existing home is on the property. and the existing site. This is the photographs taken just to show the context. You've got the new Sprint gas station across Appling Harlem and the older gas station as well. This is a plat of the property. And the applicant has submitted a concept plan. The larger building here is 13,000 square feet, and that's proposed for a pool hall with a restaurant. And then the second building here is 4,500 square feet for commercial, for leasable units. The main part of this development is the pool hall and restaurant, and the applicant has submitted a narrative to describe the activities and uses there. The health department has let us know that any restaurant or game room would have to be on a sewer system, not on a septic tank. And it's important to look at the community commercial zoning would allow uses such as daycare, gyms, medical offices, salons, etc., which could potentially be a high water usage. So those are the concerns from staff. And the applicant has had several conversations with Water Utility Department this week, and they've been looking at different designs, but nothing has been approved. And the GDOT has also said that they won't allow the proposal for the sewer that's been submitted so far. In the future development, this site is in the activity center for Appling Harlem, and that does allow mixed uses, which could be commercial, professional, residential, employment opportunities as well. And staff is recommending disapproval because of the concerns of the availability of sewer to the property. And we have included conditions in your report if you do choose to approve this.
Okay. Gentlemen, any questions of staff? Do we know how far the closest sewer is away from the proposed site?
There's sewer on Appling Harlem Road, but it's still a fair distance away based on what Water Utility have said to us.
Okay. And I'm assuming it's on somebody else's property? And the applicant would have to be granted an easement to access that?
Mr. Chairman, the applicant has submitted something that indicated that the manhole, give or take, at the entrance of the Greenpoint, so that in essence, they would have to come out and around.
Okay.
Within the easement?
Within the right-of-way.
Okay. And he'd have to get...
Or get an easement through private property.
Okay. Or a easement from the county to lay the sewer line in the right of way?
GDOT?
It would
GDOT.
be, the proposal was within the road right-of-way. Where GDOT was involved was obviously, they have jurisdiction in some aspects for Appling Harlem. My understanding is there is an aerial section of that proposal within the road right-of-way, so that was part of where GDOT's perspective was. They were not going to approve that portion of it, and they would have to seek alternative design measures to make that work.
Okay.
But that has not been formally submitted to GDOT, so there is no formal decision by them at this time.
Gentlemen, any other questions? Is the applicant here this evening? Yep. Would you like to come forward and give us any additional information? Please give us your name and home address. Would you wait till you get to the microphone, please, sir?
My name's John Hubbard, and I live at 225 Sweetwater Landing, North Augusta, South Carolina. As far as the sewer, I've developed property in Columbia County years ago. When we did it, we stubbed the sewer to the next property. We didn't make the man come get an easement. It was required. I don't know what it was or not, but we did. We stubbed property into West Acres Baptist Church. They come told us they were doing it. We just run them a line, stubbed it into their property where they didn't have to get cross aisles. It's on the print with the easement.
There was available sewer, I'm guessing, where there's no available sewer here.
Not right now that I know of, but what I understand, they're gonna develop the property behind it. sewer would be there then. I'm not, I don't know.
Yes, ma'am. Please give us your name and home address.
Sherry Miller, 943 Brown. I spoke with Donald Prather a couple of times about an easement neighborhood. Selling homes down the street, $1 million homes, and he don't think that those people want to buy property down there, game room and a restaurant. Not be willing
Okay.
to name because
He told me the same thing this morning, that he would not grant an easement to cross the property for a sewer line. Okay. All right, gentlemen, have you got any questions? All right, thank you all.
Say something?
Yes, sir, please.
Without Columbia County, they requiring us to get sewer. They're giving somebody else a veto over us. You're,
No, sir, I don't think so. It's his right to sell you an easement across his property.
it is, I agree, I agree with that, but you're telling us we've got to get on it. We can't put a septic tank. We've got no other alternative.
That's the Department of Health. That's not our code. That's the state code.
But
Am I correct on that?
Yes,
State Health Department code?
yes.
So that's not our code. That's,
we'll check into that.
yeah, absolutely. He's the chair of the health department right there.
Keep calling it a pool hall, but there's, the oldest restaurant in this county is probably Rack Grill. That's what we were gonna put, that'd be Rack 4. We've got 3 now. We've got one in Aiken, one in Richmond County, and one in Martinez.
All right, sir. Thank you very much. Yes, sir, you have something you'd like to add?
My name's Michael Newsom, 1204 Amberley Drive, Evans, Georgia. I own the other 3 Rack and Grills. I don't know if you've ever been there. I mean, it's one of the longest restaurants in Columbia County. It's hard for me to see or no one would be okay with our track record becoming another restaurant. I understand Prather's a Greenpoint, control that area, but I mean, it kind of is what it is. If they don't feel that they want it, that's what it sounds like from the outside.
No, sir, they're
So
just,
if
they're
we-
not
if
gonna
we
allow
get
you.
around the sewer aspect, you're saying that we can make it happen.
Now, you're making accusations now that are not true.
Okay, well, I mean, it just seems like that from the outside.
But it's not
Sorry
true.
if it, okay, it may
Yeah,
not be.
that's the wrong thing to say.
All right, sir. Is there anyone else that'd like to speak either for or against this particular rezoning? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing and accept a motion to approve with conditions to deny or to table.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to disapprove RZ 21-10, -09.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Okay, any discussion? I think without some plan for sewer, I don't see how you can go forward, and we can't, per state code, operate with a septic tank as much as you'd like to for any of the uses that are described for that location in the future. Would I be correct on that? For daycares, or
Yeah, the health department would want to.
would have to, it'd be based on flow and that kind of thing? Okay,
Another thing too, that, there's nothing wrong with what they're proposing, but it's just the wrong location for what is all coming in that area in the next 2 to 5 years. It's just not conducive to everything that's gonna be going on there.
all right. Any other comments? No, ma'am. We've already made the motion and closed the floor. Okay, so all in favor to disapprove? All opposed? Motion to disapprove carries 5-0. Ms. Montgomery, got a variance filed VA 211006.
Yes, sir. This is a request for variances to both setbacks and our nonconforming uses section at 413 La Vista Drive. This is the location of the property on the corner of La Vista Drive and Knights Way, currently zoned R1, single-family residential. And this is the aerial of the site. You can see this is quite a narrow lot. This is a nonconforming lot in the R1 district. You can also see the existing cottage here that is a nonconforming structure on the lot, which does not meet the current building setbacks. This is a photograph of the existing site, and you can see the entire width of the property here. This is one side property line and the other side property line, so that is the entire site. And this is the existing cottage on the property and the existing accessory buildings viewed from Knight's Way. And the proposal why we're seeing this is there is a proposal to remodel the cottage and add a new covered deck onto the building. Since it is non-conforming, any expansion of the site requires the variances to allow that construction. So this is the setback portion. So for section 90-53 first regarding the building setbacks, for a non-conforming lot, there is some allowance under 9132 to reduce the setbacks. However, that's not sufficient for this lot. So we are looking at a variance to 90-53. These show the required setbacks from Knight's Way and from the side property line. And the dark red area is where they actually overlap. So there is no buildable area on this lot under the code required setbacks. A large part of this is the county acquired the 60 feet here for the construction of Knight's Way. That was all originally part of this lot until the road construction took place. So we did acquire a good portion of the property. It obviously created a very narrow lot that now has no buildable area on it. So the variance to section 90-53 is to recognize the existing setbacks for the existing structure. So that is 2.5 feet from the right-of-way for Knight's Way for the existing cottage, as well as 7 feet from the east side property line for the existing cottage and the existing storage building, which is just over 2.5 feet from the north property line. All of these buildings are very small. The cottage itself is about 375 square feet. The storage building is about 96 square feet. They've been in place, according to the applicant, since the 1970s with no known issues. This is actually part of a larger parcel that fronts on Cox Road. This is not a buildable portion of that parcel, so there's no great impact to the neighboring parcel there. And staff is in support of the request to reduce the setbacks for the existing buildings. The second portion of this request is in regards to section 90-132, which is in regards to non-conforming uses and structures. This is a non-conforming lot, and this has been a non-conforming lot since the county initiated the current zoning code. This subdivision was developed in the early 1970s, primarily with 20,000 square foot lots. The county then implemented zoning in 1979 in the form of the current zoning code, and designated this area R1, which has a minimum lot size of 40,000 square feet when it's on septic. So basically, at that time, this entire subdivision became non-conforming. Our acquisition of the property for Knight's Way certainly exacerbated that and made the lot even smaller, but it has actually been a non-conforming lot since 1979. So for section 90-132, with non-conforming lots, there is some allowance to reduce the building setbacks on those lots. So they are allowed to be used as building sites, provided that the setbacks are not reduced more than 20% or less than 15 feet from the right-of-way. Unfortunately, even with that, with the narrow width of the lot, you've got about 8 feet of buildable depth on the lot, which you can see in the little cleared strip through there, which really is not sufficient to construct anything on the property. So the 90-132 setback portion is a similar argument to the 90-53 setback argument, that basically it is not a buildable lot without variances to these setback requirements. In regards to the building, the non-conforming building has been established also since 1974 per the applicant. It was likely built lawfully. It would have been over 60 feet from this side property line when this was part of the property. So it would have not been on the road as it is now, and that road was constructed much more recently. The proposed remodel and addition is a benefit to the area. Building standards has added conditions that would require all of the remodeling work to bring the building up to current code, so that is an improvement to public safety. And the deck addition that's proposed is towards the inside of the lot, so it's not towards the road or any closer really to the adjacent properties than the current structure. So staff has no concerns with allowing the modest addition and expansion of this non-conforming building. So staff is recommending approval with several conditions. The front setback from Knight's Way is reduced to 2.5 feet for the existing structure only. Any new structures must be at least 10 feet from the right-of-way and must meet all other setbacks as defined in the 9053 and 9132 requirements. Side setbacks are reduced to 2.5 feet for the existing structures, with new construction required to meet the side setbacks in the code. And then the conditions from building standards regarding the construction or renovation work meeting all the applicable codes and the permits being required before any of the work begins. And that concludes the staff recommendation.
Thank you, ma'am. Gentlemen, any questions of staff? Okay, this is a public hearing. Is the applicant here? Yes, sir. Is there anything you'd like to add to the presentation? All right. Thank you, sir. This is a public hearing. Is there anyone here that'd like to speak either for or against this particular variance? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing and accept a motion to approve with conditions, deny, or to table.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to approve with conditions, file VA 211006, variances to sections 90-53 and 90-132 at 413 La Vista Drive.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Approved carries 5-0. And Mr. Butler, you have the final word tonight. File VA 211007, variance to section 90-144.
There seems to be a consistent theme all of a sudden. So it's, again, a very similar to the last meeting as well, very similar request. This is at 3493 Greenpoint Drive, variance section 9-144C1 to permit a fence over 8 feet in height. This is the location of the property on Greenpoint Drive, but also fronts on Ferris Ferry Road as well. Again, currently zoned R3, and then across the street has some R1 and some R2 as well, and some PUD down the street as well. Aerial view of the site. Again, we can't see, like last time we could see the fence on the aerial, this time we can't. But again, we'll be seeing it here in a moment. And the plat of the property. And the as-built of the home itself. So the issue before you tonight is another fence on Ferris Ferry and on Greenway Drive. This one's a little bit higher than the previous one, about 12 feet high at its highest point. About 25 feet off the road, give or take, from the applicant. We haven't actually measured from the center line or anything with this one. We're going off of what he's told us in this respect. This one is a little bit different. One of the things with this one, the road itself, again, we kind of already know from before, the road's not going in this direction, so there's no argument for noise. We're not going to focus on that side of it. The privacy side of it, is definitely something to consider. The difference with this one, you can see here, so the road is now above the property. This is the property here, and this is the road itself. When they construct the path here, they'll also be building a retaining wall with a Jersey barrier on top of it, and his fence will be beyond that, about 25 feet back. So one of the things of this is that because of that, his fence is going to appear lower than it actually is. According to this, it's going to be about 8 feet will be visible at its highest point along the roadway itself. So again, very different from before where we didn't really have a topography difference. It was actually either at grade or a little bit higher than before. So again, it's going to appear much higher than the 8 feet that's allowed by code. Again, in this case, it's different. And again, very good argument by the applicant, one that the staff is inclined to agree with in this situation because of topography. And that's one thing that variances are, one of the deciding factors for a variance is topography. In this situation, there's definitely an argument for that. So if we go to the next picture here, again, you can kind of see the topography here is not, obvious, but again, it does go down as it goes towards this property. So due to all these factors, staff is recommending approval with condition. Again, requiring additional plantings, utilizing trees and or shrubs outside the timber construction easement, again, to kind of further hide this fence from view. And that includes staff recommendation.
Mr. Butler, could you refresh us as to what happened last meeting and also what happened at the commissioners' meeting Tuesday night?
So at the meeting on, when was that? 7th? The 7th? Yeah, the 7th. You guys recommended approval of the request. Went to the Board of Commissioners Tuesday evening. They recommended to essentially table that action until the 21st of December for us to work on an overlay for Ferris Ferry and potentially other areas in the future to address this issue. So that will not be heard until at the absolute earliest, December 21st. site item is kind of in limbo. That applicant's able to keep his fence for the moment while we work on what the overlay may look like. So again, that is absolutely in flux.
So as part of the overlay, are you tasked with coming up with a single design and materials or multiple designs and materials for individuals or HOAs to adopt? I mean, have you been given any guidance at all as to how this process works?
As of right now, I would say no. It's one of those that we certainly have ideas on how to go about it. It's one that you're using kind of, again, we can use already existing overlays as an example. Like for instance, the no protection overlay district has different standards for Furious Fair and Evanston Locks versus Columbia and Bel Air. And they're the same thing, but they have totally different standards that are within both. So again, you could have it where Furious Fair, we allow you to have, let's say, a 10-foot high fence with, you can have wood, vinyl, what have you. And then if we do have this apply to other corridors, it could then say for instance, Heart of McManus, that's the next project. Maybe they're allowed to have an 8-foot high only, but we only want you to do brick or something. So again, there's a way to go about doing that. But again, at this time, we don't have any clear direction. It's very much up in the air.
Sterling, do you have anything to add
No,
to that?
I would concur with Will's description of the discussion on Tuesday night. I know that is something that the commission is tasked staff to look at, and we have not had significant discussions on it. But to that end, there are a number of factors that will be considered as part of that overlay process, and whatever may come of that, we'll present that to the commission no later than the December 21st meeting for them to give direction on, moving forward. Of course, that would require a text amendment to the Code of Ordinances. So if that, again, speaking in hypotheticals, if they were to, have staff initiate that, we would come back through the planning process, public hearing at the planning commission, up to commission, et cetera. So it wouldn't be until several, probably February at the earliest before that would considered be adopted if we were to proceed with it. And again, that's speculation at this point.
Okay, hypothetically, let's say that you all come up with an overlay district and it's approved and you have a materials list and that kind of thing. I've heard lots of references to things being grandfathered. What happens to the existing two structures? Do they have to conform, or would everybody else build around them to whatever the new standard would be?
That hasn't been decided because the Board of Commissioners postponed action on the request from 2 weeks ago on October 7th. So the one that's already before them has been postponed. They have not taken action one way or the other. I'm not entirely sure which way they will go with that.
That's not saying it might not be the same design they have already.
It may not be what they have, the overlay may not be what they currently have constructed, either application, in which the Board of Commissioners will have to decide whether they're going to approve variances to allow them to either keep what they have or keep portions of what they have, whether that's a height or a materials or whatever the case is. So what I think you're getting at is do you make a decision tonight on this to push it forward to the Board of Commissioners and basically put both of them in that same category and let the Board of Commissioners decide how they want to handle it?
As part, I know that we've had, I can remember one instance where we had a cell tower that came in several years ago, and the county disagreed on the placement. The cell tower came in, Verizon came in with some pretty elaborate engineering studies, and the county had none. So how will we justify requests along corridors? If somebody comes in and says, well, the noise levels are this, are we gonna have people on our staff that go out and take measurements? I mean, what are the standards gonna be? I guess, is that gonna be part of the overlay district as well?
It could potentially. However, what I would say is that with road projects and a lot of what I think has created this interest in looking into the fence overlay option is that there was not a sound barrier installed as part of this, or is not anticipated to be installed as part of this project. And one of the reasons for that is that federal dollars were not used for this project. Therefore, the federal standards that go along with those federal dollars were not being implemented. In those situations where federal dollars are used, they do a sound study. They're required to. If it meets that whatever that certain threshold is and exceeds it, then the sound barrier goes up automatically. It does not have any discretion as to whether the citizens want it, the county wants it, et cetera. It's part of the road project. So in this instance, that was not the case, so there was not a sound study done to my knowledge that one way or the other, because we didn't have to do it. The applicant has, in this case, both the previous applicant and the one tonight were compensated for their property as well as their improvements, including their fences. So in their effort, they're replacing their fences, although not at the height that is permitted by the county code. So what they're asking for is to exceed that. The process that we're about to undertake for the Board of Commissioners with the fence overlay is to determine, sort of what is the reasonableness, the appropriateness for the height, because obviously they're in these situations where they reverse frontage, they're allowed to go to 8 feet by right. So it would be something I would assume much, certainly higher than 8 feet in height. And then, the discussion about materials. That was something that has been talked about, just in, I would say, in sort of very basic sense. So we need to kind of vet that a little more and figure out what exactly that is. What type of materials are we talking about? Are we talking about, vinyl clad chain link? Are we talking brick? Are we talking PVC? Are we talking wood? And are those all in play? Are some of those in play? Are one of those only in play? So those are the types of things that we'll be going through in this process. But to your point, I think that sound is not necessarily a determining factor in the need or want for a fence and the height of that fence.
And I'm in the advertising business, and there's a thing, when I do a commercial and it's got a payment in it, that is a trigger for me to have to put a particular type of disclaimer in and disclose the APR, the length of the term, the amount financed, all that kind of good stuff. What's the trigger going to be? Is it going to be, I want it? Or is it, are we going to have a certain set of standards that have to be checked before we allow fences to be put up? That's what I'm getting.
Yeah, and I guess
what's that going to be?
And I don't know that answer at this time because we have not gone through that process of determining what is reasonable to be considered as part of the overlay, the fence overlay, excuse me. All of those could be factors to be considered that I mentioned and others.
You got to keep in mind too, this is a state road.
Right.
Not a county road. So the county wasn't involved as far as whether we should put sound barriers or not, to my knowledge.
They weren't. We don't have the final decision.
Right. And it wasn't a cost factor to us either.
No, it would have been included as part of the project.
Correct. So that needs to be understood.
Sounds like really not a decision here to be made because our commissioners are going to study it.
Well, one thing to consider is if you make a recommendation, and again, that's what it is a recommendation, you're basing it on the information that you have in hand. Clearly, the Board of Commissioners can take your recommendation or go in a different direction with it, and they may certainly do that depending on how the fence overlay discussion goes forward. One thing to keep in mind is if you're of a mind to postpone your action tonight till a date after, I'm assuming it would be after the December 21st Board of Commissioners meeting, which would mean it would push into January, the action would still have to be taken by this body to recommend a decision to the Board of Commissioners at that time, which then puts them, a couple weeks later out for a BOC decision.
I hate to
rather than putting it forward and then putting both of those on the same agenda.
hate to keep going back to triggers, but it sounds like we're going to deal with federal roads, state roads, county roads, and private roads.
Potentially, all of those could be in play.
So are we going to come up with a standard for each one? Or are we just going to take a particular place and that's it for now?
Yeah, and I think the initial focus will be that of the directive, which is Fury's Ferry, But in, having that initial discussions, I think it's clear that it's not going to likely only be Fury's Ferry. It could very well be, but, the opportunity that this will come up again in other road projects where we're going to widen and expand our road network, we're likely looking at more than just state roads. We're looking at county roads, and it may even include others. So, yeah, so it'll have to be discussed. Now, whether we move forward with any action on any of that will yet to be determined.
Because I can tell you, it's, again, and it will have an enterprising fence company that goes through every construction zone and says, hey, we built fences over here, we can do it for you. And that's what I'm afraid we're gonna start the process on.
Sure, and part of the issue that may be up for discussion as part of this as well is that we currently don't require a permit for fencing, to a certain extent. And so the challenge there becomes, oftentimes they get built before we know that they're either in compliance or out of compliance. And if they're out of compliance, then we have to go forward with, if we're notified of it, then we deal with it through code enforcement. It's a lot of the reason why we end up with variance requests before this board, because we've had a number of them of late where, something is either in construction or has been completed and is not in compliance with our standards, and therefore has to either be approved through a variance process or denied, and they have to remove it or reduce it to compliance.
Something else that crosses my mind is you may have a disparate housing issue. One side of a highway, you've got one price of a subdivision, or a subdivision that has higher price homes than one across the street. So how do you come up with something that's fair to everybody involved? Because, the ability to pay is going to be a part of this too.
Sure, and I think that's part of the task that's before us, is to be comprehensive in the options, the opportunities, and the issues that may come up as a result of this potential legislative action. So that's part of the staff's job, is to kind of think through all of these what if scenarios and worst case scenarios and best outcomes, and put forth the best possible recommendation. But I would suspect, and part of the reason, quite frankly, that the commission extended it as far out into the future as they did, was to give us an ample time to kind of vet all of the rabbit holes, so to speak.
This is a lot more complicated than just deciding whether you can or can't put up a fence,
That's correct.
because it could change the look of entire sections of the county.
It very well potentially could, and I think that's part of the reason why there's a healthy amount of discussion that will ensue in the coming weeks.
I got one question too, is, and so to help us decide what we need to do tonight, is the end result of all this may be nothing changes and we stay with what we've got.
Correct.
So we need to consider that as well.
That's correct, and again, I think that's part of the deliberation for the Planning Commission tonight is that if nothing were to change, and we go through this exercise, and ultimately the decision is to stand pat, then by tabling or postponing this decision and leaving it in the hands of the Planning Commission for a future date, then still puts them again a couple more weeks out. Not at the end of the world kind of an issue, but it's just something to consider as well.
My personal opinion would be that we need a decision either for or against tonight to move it on down, so the commissioners can handle both the issues at one time.
That's why I bring that
Put that to
forward.
bed, yeah.
They may not change the rules.
Yeah, they may not. They may very well
kinda need
not.
to act as if.
But I think with the proximity of these two structures, I think, the commissioners probably would want to deal with them both at the same time. But we're getting ahead of ourselves here. This is a public hearing. Is the applicant here? Mr. Stone, I see you in the back. Please come forward, give us your name and home address.
William Stone, 3493 Greenway Drive. A couple of points I want to make. The most important was, I would ask you to pass it on to where it could be. Second thing is, the fence was constructed so that it projects from the center line of the road and the sidewalk to be 8 feet. I can stand sidewalk and look at the top of my fence, and it's 8 feet projected, just like one of the signs that you would have along the side of the highway. You don't measure it from the ground level because of the topography. You measure it from the sight lines, and it's within code. In fact, I cannot build a perimeter fence on my property right now. Code. I can't do it. Reason being, the retaining wall is 4 feet on the west end of my property, 6 feet on the east end of my property, with a 30-inch Jersey barrier above it. Means it'll be above my head on the west end, about a foot above my head on the east end. 8-foot fence would be below the sight line. It actually, you could jump over the Jersey barrier into my yard. So you brought up something very important in the last meeting, Mr. Cox, that it was about noise. This is not nearly as much about noise as it is security, safety of my family, and safety of people on that sidewalk. I would probably be liable if someone staggered over the sidewalk and fell into my yard. So I need a perimeter fence, I need safety. And one of the other issues, we brought up the argument of what if you have disparity on income on either side of the road? So what I'm asking to do is to put nothing there that wasn't there before. Fence made out of wood, slightly set back with an 8-foot projection. Just got through tearing one down. The only problem is I can't put up one that looks just like it that protects my property and be in code. So this was by thought and by design. And when I found out I would actually need a variance, I was thinking, why? I talked to the fence guy. He said, no problem. You guys all know about that. The rationale to me was it made sense. I didn't need it. It was only going to be 8-foot projection. You know, the argument about the material might be a good argument. I can paint it. I can decorate it. I can make it look, I can make it disappear. And I think the recommendation that Mr. Sullivan had was to put plantings in between the fence and the yard. You won't be able to see it, and you will definitely be able to see over it from the road or from the sidewalk. So in my mind, it does no harm in the neighborhood. It does no harm along the perimeter. And I think you're worried about the aesthetic of the neighborhood. I get that. If you look at that perimeter fence, it's along these two neighborhoods there now. It's ramshackle, it's old, it's down a hill, it doesn't look good. If we want to construct something along that corridor, you could possibly put that same fence along the top of that Jersey wall, which would mean you'd have to go to the state and work through some sort of deeding mechanism to be able to build that fence on top of the Jersey barrier. But you could put a really nice decorative fence along there, attenuate noise, provide for security, and make a really nice corridor with a nice fence, painted gray, right above that Jersey barrier with the growth that's going to be there by the state road property. So I'm asking you to at least, let's get it to where we can talk about it, move it forward, and let's keep our lot safe until we decide.
Mr. Wilder, you're on the Greenway Committee. Have y'all had discussions like this about when you're near subdivisions, how you shield the Greenway from houses and residential developments or apartments or whatever you're near?
The few instances where we're gonna come close enough that it's a concern, the natural vegetation doesn't protect it, we're going to plant like you would, like we require the shopping center.
So it's all the way done with plantings, no permanent structures
We
like
haven't
this?
gotten really close to
Okay.
anything yet.
Because I know y'all are, as that develops over time, this is going to be an issue, so that's something we may want to take into consideration too, is how we handle that.
Yeah, we're well aware of that issues, particularly as Russell indicated, as we move into the future phases in the next couple of years, we will be a lot closer than we have been to date. I mean, at this point, we haven't really hit any of the adjacent subdivisions other than, rear yards that are set back off of the property. I mean, we intentionally did not put the trail up against the property lines per se. There's several feet, if not a significant distance. And most of those neighborhoods did have an 8-foot or 6-foot high privacy fence in their rear yards. Oftentimes, those were either lots that sloped down away, so the fence was higher, but in a lot of instances, those are actually sloping up to the house, and so the fence merely contains the yard, not necessarily provides any.
Why would
One of the things I want you to know, that whatever we do here is kicking the can, going to the commission, and so whatever we do here,
Sure.
don't worry about it. It's going to be above our heads.
I'm okay with that. One of the things, the point I want to make is, I want it to be thought through. and I want it to be considered. I don't want it to be put aside and said, it's too hard. Because there are 15 families along there that have this similar problem.
And I think that's based on my conversations with commissioners, that's what they're doing. So I really think that everything we've talked about is nice talk, but they're gonna do that.
That's one of the reasons that I wanted to have some of the conversations tonight we might not normally have, is just so it's on the record and it gives them food for thought, because they do listen to these and that kind of thing, so.
And I would add,
And we may not be involved in the discussions once it gets passed here.
I'm sorry, I might just add too, that to my limited discussions on it thus far, it's more than one subdivision, two subdivision. It's a lengthier, extent of Furious Ferry, because that road project is longer than just a couple of these subdivisions. So the potential impact to this could be, well over 100+ lots up and down, because
And my
both sides of the
point
streets.
is we should have thought of that sooner. Like,
We didn't, honestly, I've been on this board for almost 15 years, and we've never had an instance like you all have created with your two fences. So, I mean, you try to plan for what you can, but, if there's no precedent, and, that's a word we use a lot, it's hard to what if, because you're what ifing with other people's money and their property. So that's one issue, but again, somebody's got to be first, and it's y'all, so.
And we had a fence variance request of a month and a half ago, that was even taller than the requested fence here.
That was in a backyard.
True, it was in a backyard, but again,
And
it's
this
kind
is
of more of a one.
Between property owners.
Yeah, more of a one-off kind of scenario where, if you have one in every once in a great while, that happens. But, if this is a consistent thing, then that's something that staff typically looks at pretty quickly and goes, you know what, this is happening too frequently, and having this situation pop up has created that interest to take a look at it a little deeper.
Something this may do in the future too, when you're dealing with state rights of way and they paid for some of the right of way, these costs probably should be included in the conversation in the beginning. And nobody knew that it was gonna come to this, but it may change the way you do business in the future.
We've had conversations, our right-of-way acquisition group has had conversations with state DOT folks and their counterparts as well, to talk about when they're out doing acquisition conversations of the sort, that, there be information available to them so that they can speak the issues of, if you want to, we're acquiring property and improvements, that, the fence requirements in Columbia County, for example, and here's a sheet that gives that information, so that there is, understanding on both sides really of what our standards are, so that, there isn't any potential confusion. And I'm not assessing any blame. I think that's just more of this process has highlighted some opportunities to be better in the future.
Well, and honestly, this may become something that the developers have to bear the burden of. If they're proposing something along a main thoroughfare that we know is going to expand in the future, let's go ahead and put this in the planning phase, as opposed to chasing the car once it's out of the road.
And in a lot of situations, we have subdivisions that have been created in, however many of the last several years, where we'll have common area where that, the individual property does not back up to the road right-of-way. There's a common area strip of land of a certain depth for a variety of reasons, but in one case, this would be one of them, where instead of dealing with, and not that it's a bad thing, but instead of dealing with a number of individual property owners, we deal with, or the state deals with, one HOA or whatever the entity that owns that piece of property, and we deal with that entire stretch. And so there's not an impact to a number of different properties.
Okay. Thanks, sir.
One last thing for the record. The fence, as it stands now, is 25 feet from the easement, the temporary easement it was a temporary easement they paid for. They didn't really pay for the fence. That's what's on the deed. But it's 25 feet back from that, and it's almost 90 feet from the center line of the road. No, it's 94 feet from the center line of the road. And the setback there is 105. So it's almost within compliance that way too. But vertically, it's definitely within compliance as it stands right now. And I think if we don't solve this, there won't be a perimeter fence there. There's no sense in building one. Be a big hole along that corridor. But I appreciate your time. Thank you very much, and thank you for letting me have a say.
Thank you.
All right.
This is a public hearing. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak either for or against this particular variance? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing and accept a motion to approve, deny, or to postpone.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to disapprove file VA 211007.
Do I hear a second? Okay, any discussion? Okay, all in favor to disapprove, raise your right hand. Okay, motion to disapprove passes 5-0. So this passes on to the commission for them to do with what they will. One moment, please, if you could do that in public comments, okay? We have no legal matters. Do we have any staff or commissioner comments? Appreciate everybody hanging in tonight. I know this is an unusual issue that first we've all seen. I think we'll probably all have a lot more discussion so we can come up with something that allows the property owners to enjoy their property as well as satisfying whatever we need on the county side. Do we have any public comments? Yes, sir, Mr. Stone, would you like to come forward?
Wait a minute. Because decision is gonna be made by the commission. And if you, then that's what we did.
They have to hear it when we kick it up to them. They can't not hear it. And they've tasked staff with coming up with the code. And our question was whether or not we allow a 12-foot fence or we stay with code. And frankly, our job is to look at code. It's not, we can't make an emotional decision, and we can't really go outside code. We can go to 8 feet, I believe, on a hardship, but we can't approve anything higher than that.
One would have been allowed at 8 feet. It would go above 8 feet, the variance.
But this is a 12-foot fence.
That's correct, yeah.
Okay. So the commissioners are the ones that would have to approve something like that. You can do whatever you want to do. I'd suggest you get a ground disturbance permit before you do that.
Yeah, and we can talk offline a little bit, but, again, the application's in process to go to the Board of Commissioners, so my suggestion is just stand pat with your fence as is until there's some sort of decision made on overlay one, but certainly the decision by the Board of Commissioners on your request here tonight, that will move to them.
And our decision tonight doesn't require you to do anything other than wait for this issue to come up before the commissioners, which I would assume would be what, in their November meeting?
Yeah,
And I would assume they'll decide to postpone that and handle both these issues at the same time once staff has come up with some kind of a conclusion as to how they're going to handle the overlay district.
Correct, and as the applicant that was here 2 weeks ago and was before the Board of Commissioners on Tuesday night, that put them basically in a holding pattern until at least the December 21st Board of Commissioners meeting, in which they could either A, take it up for a vote and decide on their request, up or down, or postpone it until the fence overlay were to be adopted. I would assume be adopted by the Board of Commissioners at a date whenever that would be available to their agenda. So, again, I think you're in the same situation as the neighbor 2 doors down. You're waiting for a decision by the Board of Commissioners. In the meantime, your fence as it is right now. I would say that you're fine to leave it as is.
All right, thanks, sir. Is there anyone else that has a public comment? Seeing none, I'll accept a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Do I hear a second? All in favor? Motion to approve at 7:09 passes 5-0. Next meeting is November 4th, 2021 at 6 PM in these chambers. Thank you for coming out.